Hello everyone, my name is Margarita and today I will present you my project. Okay, so my project is called The Science of Microexpressions and it is about microexpressions. So microexpressions are a form of nonverbal communication, which means that through microexpressions we communicate without the need for words. For this reason, microexpressions are very different from, for example, talking or writing. So microexpressions are involuntary movements of the muscles in our faces, and they convey emotions. For example, when we're happy, we smile. The smile is part of the microexpression of happiness. However, we all experience emotions differently, so the microexpressions resulting from them are also different. But there are 7 universal emotions that we all feel, and the microexpressions that display these emotions are the same worldwide. Here on the right, you can see a facial expressions chart with the 7 universal emotions that are happiness, sadness, disgust, surprise, contempt, anger, and fear, and the 3 images that display the microexpressions. So the goal of my project was to introduce the topic of microexpressions to my school community, expanding both your knowledge and mine on this form of communication. So in order to achieve my goal, I decided to write a book around 40 pages. And I chose to write a book rather than, for example, organizing a lesson or making a video, because I thought that by writing a book, I could discuss as much information as I wanted and also share it as many times as I needed. So I thought that writing a book would achieve my goal more successfully. So the global context of my project was inquiring into personal and cultural expression, since microexpressions are a form of personal expression, and since writing is again a form of personal expression. So my book was divided into 4 chapters: an introduction to microexpressions, recognizing microexpressions, my test, and conclusion. Now I will show you each part. So in the first chapter, Introduction to Microexpressions, I explained what microexpressions are, what is their purpose, and what are some key events in the history of microexpressions. Then in the second chapter, I analyzed each emotion, and after introducing the emotion in a paragraph, I explained which are the cues that are present in their microexpressions. For example, for anger, I talked about the forehead and eyebrows, since when a person is feeling angry, on the forehead, there are 2 vertical lines between the eyebrows. Of course, for each emotion, I talked about the different cues, and there were always more than one. So in the third chapter, I talked about my test, because for my personal project, I decided to also conduct an experiment, since I wanted to have the possibility to draw my own conclusions on the topic of microexpressions. And for the test, I started from these 2 questions. Are untrained people able to recognize the 7 universal microexpressions? If yes, which cues do they use to identify each of the expressions? So throughout my test, I wanted to answer these 2 questions. For the experiment, I took 20 participants and I showed them 7 images displaying the 7 universal emotions. Then I asked them to match the emotion with the image and explain to me why they made that match. For example, for the first emotion, which is enjoyment, many people told me that they chose this image since the person was smiling. So what they did to make this match was look at the mouth. After conducting the experiment, I collected all the data and I made this general table and this general graph. And I explained both the table and the graph in 2 paragraphs. Then I went more into detail and I made a graph and a small table for each emotion. And I explained the graph and the table in a paragraph. Then in the last section, I answered to the 2 research prompts and I made a final comparison between the information that I found in the second chapter of the book and the data obtained from my test, because I noticed that, for example, experts to identify the microexpression of contempt usually use the eyebrows, whereas untrained people tend to use more the mouth. So I explained this relationship between experts and untrained people. Okay, so in order to complete and successfully achieve my goal, I had to follow and complete different steps. that are part of the investigating, taking action, and planning parts. But the most important steps to actually complete and write the book were conduct research on the topic of microexpressions, read the book Il linguaggio segreto del volto by Anna Guglielmi, which is a book about microexpressions and how to recognize them, then develop and carry out my test, write the book, and finally design the cover. So this is the cover that I designed for my book, and here on the top you can see the title of the book and the quote from Paul Watzlawick that is about microexpressions and that I really liked. So after writing the book and making the cover, I printed it, and this is the final result. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my personal project.